Happy politics, and welcome to yet another edition of BC Poly Hot Stove, your favorite BC politics podcast. I know this because you tell me in the emails, and you did send me some this week. My name is Maclean K. I'm the editor-in-chief of The Orca, and I'm joined once again in a socially distant manner by...
It's Jordan Bateman, VP Communications for the Independent Contractors and Businesses Association and Green Bay Packers owner, but stay tuned for the end of the show for that particular victory lap.
Part of me just wants to rip off the Band-Aid and get it over with, but I don't want to alienate that section of our audience. So yes, we will reserve that misery for the end.
Misery. This is great news. Great.
I'm gonna get the football spiked in my face. Speaking of in your face, let's start with the topic du jour in BC politics, which is the price of gas. It's continuing to set new records. The highest I've seen was $2.20 and change a liter in a Esquimalt here in Metro Victoria. I'm sure it was probably even higher in parts of Greater Vancouver. It's only going to go up. I would love to tell you, if you're listening, okay, well, this is as bad as it's going to get, and then from here it's going to ease off. Nope. Even the Premier said this summer is going to be hard for gas prices. Jordan, I know where you are. Does Langley have the TransLink tax?
Yes, Langley has the TransLink tax. Before we move off the Premier, he also told you to take a bus. So for those of you watching, in Terrace and you need to get to, Kitimat or whatever, just take a bus. Come on.
Yes.
The Premier's got your back. Mr. Common Man, Common Touch, he feels your pain. Just get on a bus and go.
So gas prices are a thorny political problem for the NDP for a couple of reasons, and I want to touch on as many of them as I can briefly. The first is that when the NDP were elected in 2017, this was something they promised to do something about, was the cost of gas. They set up a report which was explicitly prohibited from looking at the role of the government taxes, but wanted to find out if they were accusing gas companies of gouging. A very expensive report later, didn't really come to any conclusions. It was very much something the NDP kind of just wanted to go away. But that was several record prices ago, and not only has the price of gas gone up, so have the taxes that the government levies on them. And to put an even finer point on it is next door in Alberta, the province has announced they're going to forego taxes on gas until the price comes back down to a certain level, which I have forgotten, but they'll be removing those taxes for quite some time if trends play out, which means that the price of gas in Calgary and where Jordan is talking to you from in Surrey and Langley is going to get even wider, and people will notice these things. This is for a province that has an admitted affordability problem. This is going to make things substantially worse for a lot of people.
Yeah, it already has. People are shocked, upset about this. You can go back even further to the NDP's tortured relationship on this file, to John Horgan, opposition critic, standing up in the House, railing against the carbon tax. Oh, it's going to raise the price of gasoline. It's going to raise the price of everything. AXA tax, following in the footsteps of his leader and mentor, Carol James. And, now it's all coming back and landing on their plate. Here's a few facts from an old gas tax fighter named Jordan Bateman. British Columbia has always had for decades of recent memory, has always had the highest gasoline prices in North America. And, sometimes it's, a lot because the price of oil and all the different things that happen to you boost it up. And sometimes it's a little bit less, but we've always had the highest gas prices, not just in Canada, but in North America. Not coincidentally, we have always had the highest gas taxes in North America. And in the Lower Mainland, it's approaching something like 75 cents a liter, and that's without factoring in some of the kind of wired in regulatory costs where government law, as far as emissions go, make gasoline more expensive to produce. That is a problem. If you actually compare gasoline prices between Surrey, British Columbia, and right across the border in Blaine, Washington, you will find that in Blaine, Washington, it is substantially cheaper, and it is almost precisely the tax difference amount cheaper. There's no special markup. There's no some evil oil company is raking in bazillions of dollars here, and this is actually comes back to taxes, the difference in price between us and our neighbors to the south. And there's just no way around it. That's why when they decommissioned the report, they said, oh, BC Utilities Council, look at gasoline prices, but don't look at taxes, which is sort of amusing since government is one of the things that are running it up. A few other problems are happening here for John Horgan. Number one, he has a carbon tax increase scheduled for April 1st. Not an April Fool's joke, just the beginning of the new fiscal year.
I would have picked a different day, but that's a different point.
It's always the start of the fiscal year, right? So the government bureaucrats, I actually think there's a bureaucrat somewhere who forced the fiscal year to be on starting April 1st just as a running gag to piss off government politicians. Okay, you're going to say, well, another cent a liter, what's the big deal? Yeah, well, every cent counts here at this point. Second of all, government could give us relief at the pumps. And, what we're going to see in Alberta is you're not going to see the companies jump up that tax difference price. This is a big problem for the government. It's a big cash cow for the government. The people who are getting off kind of scot-free, Maclean, are the Trudeau Liberals. Little known fact, you pay GST on everything in gasoline, including on provincial taxes. You pay tax on tax. And of course, GST at 5%, when you're paying, $2.099, generates a heck of a lot more money when gas is $1.29. So, Trudeau kind of gets off. If I were John Horgan, I would stand up. First of all, if I was Kevin Falcon, I'd do exactly what he did. Put out a fantastic video of him in front of the gas station in Surrey, kind of the I feel your pain video, laying the blame precisely on 3 things that the NDP have done. Perfect video, worked well. It's going all over our social media, and it's sparking a conversation. So Falcon's doing the right thing. If I were John Horgan, I would try everything to deflect to the feds. Wow, they charge tax on tax. Oh, that darn Trudeau. But of course, Horgan had already picked one fight with Trudeau on Trans Mountain back in the day. They kissed and made up over it. There's all sorts of crazy rumors about potential appointments that a prime minister like Prime Minister Trudeau controls. A tip of the hat to the future ambassador of Ireland is a great rumor that is always thrown out there when it involves John Horgan. So you don't really want to piss, off Ottawa, especially when you're trying to extract more healthcare money out of them. So, tough spot for John Horgan. He's the one who made this dumb promise that he was going to bring down gas prices. Oh, also cell phone prices, and mine are higher than ever. So, great job on that on 2 fronts. He's the one who fought the carbon tax at one point, but now defends it passionately when it's actually an even worse tax than it was because it's no longer revenue neutral and all the money's just floating away into government. This is he's going to have to wear some of the blame on this.
Yeah, and as I pointed out on Twitter, this is actually a worse political problem than it might first appear, in that high gas prices disproportionately affect people who have to drive to work. Yeah. And so in this case, this means the suburbs. In the Lower Mainland, we're talking Surrey, Langley, Richmond, the Tri-Cities. Here in Victoria, it's Esquimalt, Langford. And in fact, it's almost silly to bring up Vancouver Island because it undermines the point I'm about to make, which is that these are swing ridings, especially in the Lower Mainland. And any problem that disproportionately affects the ridings that will probably be at least targeted by the BC Liberals as potential wins, it makes things a little more awkward. You're seeing a lot of reaction on Twitter right now of some of the usual suspects saying, too bad. Just take the bus. I walk my kid to school. I actually do walk my kid to school. And tough. It's your fault for having an SUV. Yeah. I mean, that's not something you can say to your plumber with a straight face. That's not something you can say to the person with 3 kids whom cannot afford a home in central Vancouver or central Victoria. We all know about the housing affordability crisis. Of course they live in the suburbs. And you say, well, then they should advocate for more transit. Okay, that's not going to help them pay for their groceries next month. Yep. The cost of which is also going up. So, I mean, it's one thing to say, we have to do these long-term things and it's, okay, well, the solution is to build SkyTrain to Langley. That's great. The price of gas is high right now. Yeah. No one's budget is going to survive until the next time the SkyTrain extension can be built out even further into the suburbs. Yeah.
And there's also online this kind of quite correct group of folks who point out that, look, high gas prices is a feature, not a bug for what the NDP actually want. The whole point of driving up taxes is to make gasoline more expensive to tax people out of this particular behavior. Now, are you really, people are like, wow, switch to electric cars. First of all, you can't get enough electric cars. There's months-long waiting lists if you can afford even to get an electric car. Second of all, there aren't enough chargers. Third of all, the BC Hydro power grid isn't strong enough to convert us all. And fourth of all, are you really saying to folks that you should strand tens of thousands of dollars of personal assets? Like, well, I have an internal combustible engine here. It may be a little Toyota Prius and take hardly anything, but I should really have an electric. That's really unfair. The problem in public policy circles often boils down to one thing that I've said a million times on this podcast. Everyone thinks that everyone else should live like they do.
Yes.
And you live in Langford, and you've got a short little drive. Well, actually, you have a driver now that takes you to your West Annex for your premier's office, and it gets really easy to think to yourself, well, everyone should live like I do. Everyone should live, in Cole Harbour and walk to work at downtown. Great, wonderful if you do. Great for you if you can. That is just not the reality that is out there for millions of people across the province. And you don't have those options, again, crossing the north. There's other things. This will increase the cost of everything. So gasoline is such an important resource. Like, we're in municipal budget cycles, or they've just wrapped up, but they're always dealing with it. Drives up the cost of running fleets of vehicles, drives up the cost of construction because those vehicles have to get to places. It gets embedded in, drives up the cost of groceries.
Yeah.
It is a real concern, and we talk about inflation and what people are feeling. Affordability is a huge issue. Affordability used to be code in BC for housing prices. It's becoming a lot bigger issue than that now. It's becoming gasoline, it's becoming groceries, $230 a week that my family used to spend on groceries. Now we're around $300 a week. We're not that much bigger. These are costs that continue to go up and up and up.
Yeah, you're right. And on the groceries, as a minor aside, it's the healthier items that are increasing the most in price.
Yeah.
So it's not as simple as saying, well, just make different choices. Those different choices are worse for you. Mm-hmm. It's no different than saying, well, we'll just eat every meal at McDonald's. It's cheaper. It is cheaper in the short run. Yeah. It is not cheaper in the long run. And these are the kinds of choices that a lot of families are facing right now. Yeah. That money has to come from somewhere. Yeah. If their gas bill is doubled and their grocery bill is up by 40%, no problem. They'll just move to an even more expensive home in the city that's not built yet.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's 2 years behind in permitting. So I do the grocery shopping in my family. My wife gives me a list, and off I go every Sunday night to the local Save-On.
We have that in common.
I listen to a podcast. It's great. And we have a sort of a standing rule. If green grapes are $2.49 or less, buy green grapes. If they're not, don't. They've not been under $4.99 in months and months. Yeah. And I'm now wondering if I will ever taste a green grape again. I just can't afford it. These are expensive purchases all of a sudden. Yeah. And you take that with all the kind of different fruits and vegetables, right? So these are core problematic issues for this government that ran on making life easier for folks. And, they can go back and say, oh, you drivers, come on, we took the tolls off the Port Mann. Well, I mean, that was great for me, who crossed the Port Mann at the time. I don't cross the Port Mann anymore. Yeah. Lots of people don't. And that was 5 years ago.
Yeah. Didn't do anything for me, I can tell you that.
Yeah. And, okay, great. So you save, let's say you saved $100 a month. It's costing you $150 to fill up your car now. That's not great. That's not a savings. You can say, wow, we've reformatted ICBC and rejigged it and given you back a bunch of money. Yeah, you substantially reduced our coverage as well. And for people who are injured, that's kind of the dirty secret they don't really talk about with ICBC, is people who are injured in car accidents are now going to get far less. So great, we waived some of our protection, got some lower rates. But again, that was last year. What are you doing for us now that gas is $2.09.9? And I just come back to it, it wasn't Kevin Falcon who promised lower gas prices. It wasn't Jordan Bateman or Justin Trudeau. It was John Horgan who looked the people of British Columbia in the eye and said, we will make life more affordable by addressing gas prices and cell phone prices, and both have been proven failures.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know there are people who watch the show and they hate watch the show and will be angry with what Jordan just said. Look, the price of gas is setting records. Obviously, that didn't work, and you're quite right to point out that was an explicit promise the government made, and I think that's only going to drive up pressure. Because, as we've noted, the price is only going to go up.
Yeah, and we get it. Look, pipelines been cut off from Russia. The energy is in demand around the world. I found it very short-term thinking. Some very short-term thinking was expressed on your other show, the Capital Direct thing that you do on Chex Mix TV or whatever it's called. I don't want to accidentally promote it. No, it's on the Orca. You can go and watch it. I found it very interesting that the idea of other pipelines making any difference or other LNG plants was immediately kind of poo-pooed by certain hosts and sort of like, oh, that's years down the road. That's the stupidest thing I've heard in question period in a long time. Well, actually, let's have a conversation about international affairs. Do we really think Putin's going anywhere? Do we really, we can hope. God knows we can hope. Do we really think that even if he does disappear and someone more moderate comes in, by more moderate means not invading sovereign nations, that's a very low bar for moderation. Do we really think that we should be, making sure that Germany long-term is reliant on Russian natural gas? Is that really the smartest play? Or is the smart play to fast-track projects as quickly as you can to invite the world, investors, to come to British Columbia and Canada and say, look, we want to be the energy storehouse. Everyone talks about, oh, Russia, they're just a gas station with an army. Ha, 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 ha. Great, we can be a gas station without an army. Buy our gas, and we treat the environment with respect, and we treat every worker with respect, and we don't throw folks off roofs for disagreeing with us or having lifestyles that we question. This is the long-term solution. Find a way. You should be reaching back out to Joe Biden. Get Keystone up and running. The governor of North Dakota is begging for it. Energy independence is more important than ever. Canada can be that fuel station for massive parts of the world, but we got to invite the companies in. Companies right now look at us and go, oh my God, it'll take a decade to get approvals, and then they flip-flop, and they'll flip-flop. No, fast-track it, invite them in. Let's get the world off Russian energy. Just as a pure, forget the humanitarian part of it. That's great, the humanitarian part of it. Look at it as cold-hearted capitalist part of it. We can eat their lunch. We can take their business for a long period of time. Do both. You can take their business and cripple their, and essentially bring jobs and resources and investment and prosperity to British Columbia and Canada, and make the world safer, and send a message against a hateful dictator, and support the efforts in the Ukraine. Support the Ukrainian efforts for, I was going to say independence, but they are already independent, to keep their independence. This to me is the logical solution. And so I find it kind of funny when, Ellis Ross of all people, who knows precisely what LNG can do to help a community prosper, who turn around the fortunes of the Haisla First Nation based on LNG and exports and, embracing that prosperity, gets kind of sloughed off in question period as if he's crazy or something. I don't understand that. That's my rant. To me, the idea is just laying down a marker that this is an idea that we should pursue. Mm-hmm. And I agree with you. I don't think you can de-link Europe's dependency on Russian natural gas and resources with what's happened. And no serious commentator would pretend otherwise. And so, yeah, you're right. There's a lot of potential here. Both. You lay out the capitalist case. I think the humanitarian case is even stronger. Yeah,
the capitalist case isn't strong. Yeah,
I do
it's
too.
Just to me, it's fairly obvious. And to people who are about to email me in anger, we're talking about natural gas. We're not talking about coal. We're not even talking about crude oil.
Bitumen.
Yes, bitumen, which is, yes, it's a fossil fuel, but it is substantially cleaner than crude oil and especially coal.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, if you like, we're going to need a lot of it.
You want to play in geopolitics? Get into the energy business. You want to make China a little more sympathetic to Canada? Get some of their cities hooked on LNG rather than on coal. That is how you raise your game geopolitically. That's what we've learned from here, right? Germany is on its knees. Angela Merkel, widely regarded as one of the great stateswomen of history. her reputation is just in the dumpster now because she relied on Russian oil, Russian natural gas.
And started shutting down their country's nuclear sector.
Exactly.
Exactly. Talk about that.
Just now her reputation is shredded. And you're like, wow, like Angela Merkel, like, 3, 4, 5 years ago, this was the person holding the world together, holding Europe together. I just don't understand this kind of reflex. Like, find ways to speed it up. We can do things fast in this country. We've proven it. Even government can do things fast. They pivoted fast on COVID. They pivoted fast on COVID supports. They pivoted fast on fixing the highways after the mudslides. Environmental permits that would normally take years were being turned around in 20 minutes in Ottawa. When we want to, we can do things very quickly. And there are groups, reputable companies pulling out of Russia with money in their hands, and customers that they want to help fulfill. And we're saying, nah, don't worry about it. No, what are we? Forget it. Go somewhere else. It's crazy.
From quickly to the polar opposite of quickly, let's talk about Lytton.
Yeah.
Which Lytton burned down, quite literally. It was in June, I believe, towards the end of June of last year. Today, March the 8th, we're recording, is the day that debris collection is scheduled to begin. Collection of debris, not rebuilding, not architectural designs, not construction, removing the debris. From June till now is, call it 9 months. Yeah, okay. I'm going to go ahead and be generous here and say there were some things this summer that would have caused delays, including the pandemic. Okay, fine, granted. 9 months to remove debris. I just simply don't understand this one, Jordan. I don't get it.
It's ridiculous. There's no other way to say it, right? There are babies in this province who have been conceived since Lytton burned down and are born. It doesn't make sense. And we talk about inflation. I can tell you right now, talking to our construction companies, our general contractors, they're telling us right now construction costs are going up about 2% a month. 9 months we've wasted. That's 18% in extra construction costs that we didn't need to pay. Again, we could do things quickly. We proved it on the highways. We proved it in getting Abbotsford back up and running. Why has it taken so long in Lytton? I have many theories. One is that it's a little removed from the Lower Mainland and not so many people know it. One is that it's a BC Liberal held riding. One is that the NDP for some reason decided to jump through all sorts of weird procedural hoops. Do you really need municipal bylaws? The municipal hall burned down, so they lost all their bylaws. So they went through a system of redoing a bunch of bylaws. Do you really need a municipal bylaw in place to truck out debris? I don't think so. And
even if you do, that's a half-hour Zoom meeting. It's just, these are not serious obstacles.
It's ridiculous.
As I say, I don't have an explanation. I am genuinely stumped because you're quite right to mention the borderline miraculous schedule of reconstructing the highways after the floods. That was brilliant, and I don't think actually gets enough credit. The men and women who actually did it, and yes, even the government who organized it all, but especially those on the ground. And for the same organizations to say it takes 9 months to start to remove debris, and Lytton is not huge. This is not like this should not have been something that takes this long. I wish I had more to add here other than just wonder and disbelief. I don't understand it.
Here's what drives me even crazier is, right, we sent a bunch of Lower Mainland dump trucks up country to clean up highways and roads and whatnot. They did. They're coming back to the Lower Mainland, passing Lytton in many cases. Wouldn't it have been great just to pull them in, grab the list? You're talking about thousands of truckloads probably, so, at some point it'd be a drop in the bucket, but at least it's a drop in the bucket. I can't imagine being a homeowner in Lytton and having watched all my worldly possessions burn, and now I've been out of this community for 9 months, and just now I'm getting word, congratulations, we guys, great news, $18.5 million to get things going again. Well done, Mike Farnworth. Where do we kiss your feet? How wonderful the government has finally come to help us in Lytton. Come on, it's despairing. Insurance companies, I think, try to get things rebuilt within 2 years. And there's a reason why, there's costs and people, they see people often leave communities if it's longer than that period of time. These big companies see all sorts of disasters around the world and they know human behavior. Lytton's never going to be the same again. that community is going to be gutted. I'm not sure what percentage of people will actually move back, but if like you lived and worked in Lytton, chances are you're living somewhere else now, working somewhere else now. It'd be hard to go back.
It would, and not to beat a dead horse here, but I mean, if you had said a couple days after the disaster in Lytton that it would take 9 months to get everything cleared, I would have thought that sounds long to start. Mm-hmm. And again, I can't emphasize enough, it's scheduled to begin today. I don't know. I wish I had more to add other than I don't get it.
I don't understand it either, and it's you just throw your hands up. Like I feel so badly for the people of Lytton. I feel so badly for Jackie Taggart, who has just worked her butt off to help as much as she can to hold the government to account, as a great example of an opposition MLA who is, invested and cares about this file and is pushing it forward every single day. And 9 months later, we get, oh yeah, I guess we should probably do something for Lytton. Let's here's $18 million to clean it up a bit.
You had mentioned, I think, in the close of the BC Liberal leadership race, that there were a couple of people that the algorithm triggered as like there's something fishy with their membership, and the problem was their address was listed as a hotel. Yeah, I agree. That is suspicious. It's worth calling them. And it turns out they were from Lytton, and they've been living in a hotel, and they're probably still living in a hotel 9 months later. And it's just, I don't know. It's
like take a moment. Wherever you are in British Columbia, just take a moment and put yourself in the shoes of a person from Lytton, and picture your home burning down, whether you're owned or rented. Picture your job, your work site is gone, and what it takes to pick up and move on to another community after that tragedy. And you have a little bit of an asset there back home in Lytton, and it's treated like this for 9 months. And tell me that that is a responsible thing that government has done. And that you feel like government has your back in this. I sincerely doubt even the most ardent NDPers would be like, no, that's perfectly acceptable.
I kind of actually am almost interested to hear what some of the pushback will be on this. Is it, is this an appropriate amount of time? Is it good that it's taking this quickly? I'm actually really curious to hear what some of the objections will be. And I said at the beginning, I understand we've had floods, we've had the pandemic. There were always going to be delays. I get that. We're talking about 9 months.
The Premier, again, looked in the eye of the people in Lytton through a camera and said, we will be here for the people of Lytton. We will rebuild better than ever. And 9 months later, we're just getting the first dump truck in. If it's even arrived today, who knows?
Before we get to the last topic, which I don't want to talk about
Maclean's DMs are open. Feel free to DM him and yell at me.
That's true.
At Maclean K. Or at George_Affleck. You can also yell at me to him.
Actually, he hasn't done that for a while, so we shouldn't. All right, fair enough. This weekend, Jordan, I mentioned the BC Liberal leadership race, which was, if you're listening to this, you will know, was won by Kevin Falcon. The BC Liberals, like most political parties, have something that, like an executive council. In the BC Liberals' case, they call it the provincial council, and it is essentially all of the regional grand poobahs of the various ridings come together in a room and they talk shop, as they should, as it's a political movement. I'm sure the NDP does something. In fact, I know they do something very similar. I don't know what they call it, as do most federal parties. This weekend was the first for Kevin Falcon in his new role as the leader, and I am reliably told that you were there.
Well, as the president of the Langley East Riding Association, I was warmly welcomed to the President's Council. I sat with two great lions of free enterprise, Gord Schoberg and Norman Stowe of Pace Group. Wonderful people. Got to catch up with a number of folks. A special shout out, I want to mention one person who came across the room. A number of people mentioned that they love the podcast, said that you're mediocre, but that I was fantastic. But Jim Stewart, who's the president of Michelle Stilwell's old riding in Parksville, Qualicum, although I think he lives in Nanaimo. He's moved there now. Jim Stewart came over and could not have been nicer about the podcast, could not have been kinder about the poor hosting job done by you and the wonderful analysis done by me.
Tough but fair.
So Jim, thank you for that. It made my little day, so that was great. Provincial Council was upbeat. It was an energized room. It was a room ready to work. And man, it was little things, Maclean. It was little things. So it was held at the Wall Center. And previous ones have been held down in the big ballroom down below.
Okay.
But this one was held in the pavilion room, which is bright, and there's like big windows and kind of cool colored glass. And the president of the party kind of made a joke like, "Oh, finally we're getting out of the basement and moving to the penthouse." And like it was great, and it was just people were ready and excited about Kevin's leadership. The other leadership candidates were in the room. They were supportive. Their ridings were supportive. It was like, okay, let's roll up the sleeves and go. The party's, it sounds like the party's debt has been basically taken care of from the last election, which is good. They made some staffing announcements that I skipped out early on, so sorry. I don't want to accidentally scoop anything that wasn't announced, but they made some staffing announcements. And then, they did like little things, right? The fundraising chair got up, gave a very energetic, positive view of how to increase. And talked a lot about how to pivot out of COVID now. I think most of us on Thursday expect Dr. Bonnie to lift a number of these restrictions. The summer barbecue circuit, I think, will be back for the first time in, 2 years.
Wow.
You're going to be able to start having events again and talking to people about things. Yeah, so it was a very energized group. They were excited. They're ready to go. It was very encouraging to see.
And this is interesting, I think, even if you are not a BC Liberal, in that for a long time the provincial party was a little, how will I put this? A little downbeat, a little downcast. Had a hard time adjusting to the new life under being in opposition. And you won't like this comparison, but it kind of reminded me of the federal Liberals. After Stephen Harper won his first couple elections. It was just this kind of like, well, how did this happen? And surely it's just a question of, the universe righting itself and we'll be back in power. And it's not how that works usually. And so, if you're the NDP and the Provincial Greens, a BC Liberals party that has sort of found its footing and knows where it's going, I think is it makes provincial politics more interesting. And I would assume the next election will be a little more competitive.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know why you think I would hate hearing that. I always love hearing about Stephen Harper's victories.
I have to admit that was pretty well played.
Yeah, there's a convention coming up in June in Penticton. This was a convention that was originally scheduled, I think, for May 2020 and was canceled or postponed. The Liberals just kept rolling the money over on file, is my understanding, with the hotel in Penticton, and it will be held in June. There's talk that they may even have a party name change ready to go by that quickly.
Really? Like something to vote on at that convention?
Yeah. There's talk, they want to have candidates in place early because they don't trust John Horgan to go the full distance. He ripped up the legislative calendar electoral election dates last time. They fully expect him to do that again. A lot of interesting things, little moving pieces coming out. I'm not sure if the name change will for sure be passed there, or if it'll be introduced, or if it'll be discussed, but that is item one, it seems like, on the agenda for Penticton in June. So,
wow.
I, for one, am always looking to go to Penticton. June is even better, so excellent news for me. I'm going to make Dan Ashton buy me dinner at his favorite place in Summerland. So, or in Penticton, wherever. Dan, get ready, get the wallet out, blow the dust off it. You owe me a dinner, and it'll be should be good. So, there was a lot of upbeat stuff. Okay, before we move on to the important Aaron Charles Rodgers news, I want to talk about my presentation of the FOI committee on Friday.
Yes, anything to delay the Aaron Rodgers discussion.
Okay, so FOI, as longtime viewers of the BC Poly HOTSTOVE will recall, the NDP inexplicably brought in Bill 22 in the last legislative session, which added an FOI fee and basically, constricted information in several different ways. Hugely unpopular act. ICBA opposed it. Canadian Taxpayers Federation opposed it. All the way to the other side of the spectrum, the Dogwood BC folks opposed it. As unified a front as you're ever going to find from BC organizations, many of us came out of the banner of the BC Freedom of Information and Privacy Association, who are doing stellar work on this file. We came under their banner, and we don't agree on we don't even agree that the sky's blue, all of us, but we agree that, the NDP should not be charging fees for this and that they're trying to constrict information. They rammed that bill through. The minister just happened to have a ministerial order ready and out the door minutes later, but, she's still consulting. And the law passed. And then they formed an FOI review committee. Group of MLAs chaired by Rick Lumack, bunch of backbench NDPers, and 2 BC Liberals, and Adam Olsen from the Greens. And they're now traveling the province, hearing from folks about what should happen with Freedom of Information and the Protection of Personal Privacy Act. So Friday, I think, was their first set of hearings. I applied. I spoke on behalf of ICBA, but as I said, Maclean, I would have spoken as a private citizen. I would have spoken as the former director of the Taxpayers Federation. I would have spoken as a former township councillor and a former reporter. Like, this is something that is important to me. It should be important to anyone who cares about government accountability. Get there a little early. Terry Mooring, president of the BC Teachers Federation, is before me. She is making a very strong case about children's private policy, privacy. How do we protect that, and make sure that she had her usual pot shots at the FSAs, and that's to be expected from the BCTF. But really, it was more about the personal privacy of students. Great, listen to that. They had a funny discussion about apps, privacy policies. Adam Olsen admitted that he never reads privacy policies when he accepts an app. Then I get my chance to speak. So I kind of, during questions, going back to the app thing, I worked in a little thing like, one of the requests that the Premier said was so egregious and so over the top was a request for his apps on his phone. But if he's anything like Adam Olsen or me, he's checking privacy policies without even checking. Like, maybe we should know the apps that are on the Premier's phone because maybe there's privacy implications. That was just more a fun kind of red meat for the BC Liberals in the room. Rustad especially got a kick out of that one. But, I talked about my career. Like, I talked about filing at Langara College as a 19-year-old journalism student, my first FOI and all that process, and then going through as, a news reporter and filing a bunch of them there, and then as a township councillor, having them filed for stuff that I did, which, definitely had, the tables were turned. And then going on to the Taxpayers Federation and ICBA, where we have to file for a number of things, including things that should be proactively released. And just how important that is, and cited specific examples of how policy was changed because of Freedom of Information requests that I requested. There's not an MSP tax today because the Canadian Taxpayers Federation and myself went through years of building the case against MSP, often through FOI showing what a foolish system it was, and eventually came to the point where all 3 parties ran in 2017 saying they'd scrap the tax. That's a direct result. I can prove it because Vaughn Palmer said so. That's a direct result of my advocacy work on that file. And it came through FOI. FOI was an important piece of that. The TransLink referendum, plebiscite, that was won by the no side thanks to FOI work that I doggedly did based on tips, often from TransLink staff, who didn't like the way that money was being wasted because they're professionals and they didn't like it. Bringing those out one after the other, one after the other, one after the other. The fare evasion stuff, that was all done through FOI. And these things matter. And so, I expressed, look, I'm a BC Liberal riding president. I get it. Everyone thinks, it's Jordan's job to bash the NDP. I am troubled by the fact that the NDP in opposition I stood shoulder to shoulder with them on many files when I was with the Taxpayers Federation. And they promised me and the people of British Columbia that they were going to make Freedom of Information the best act in the country, the most open government in the country, the most transparent government in the country. They would never do things like fees. They would never do things like constrict information. They wanted more proactive disclosure. They wanted more openness and transparency. And since they got into government, they've done the exact opposite. I don't know how you can say that they haven't. They've done the exact opposite of what they told people like me they would do. And I express personal disappointment in that. That's why people get cynical about politicians, because they say one thing in opposition, they do another when they have the levers of power. It's hard for me to, really get my head around it.
They added to that this week when the NDP have said they have no intention of bringing the legislature itself under Freedom of Information laws, which was recommended by the panel of experts in the wake of the first Darryl Plecas report, as something that would go a long way towards preventing that kind of overspending and entitlement and theft. And now it's like, well,
Yep.
and they said they'd do it at the time. There's a great piece by Rob Shaw in the Orca this morning with the quotes from, just a couple years ago now. We're talking 2 years, saying we have every intention of moving forward on these recommendations. These are good ideas we're not doing it.
Yeah. And look, and I said to the committee, I've said it here, like there's maybe 500 people in BC who care about this.
Yeah.
But those 500 people are the ones who are getting up every day thinking about public policy, how to make things better, how to communicate cases, wondering how government got to certain policy decisions. Like the reflex, we need to reorient all of our information, our view on information as government. You need to reorient it to the idea that this is not government's information, it's taxpayers, or if you prefer, the public's information. It's their information. And government should have to make the case to keep it secret, not the public should have to make the case to have it released. And I'm not talking about personal privacy issues and kids' names and address. Obviously, you've got to keep that safe and severed. But I'm talking about how people come to policy decisions, how certain parts of the taxation system are working. Like that sort of thing, those metrics, those reports, those analyses should be made public.
I agree. And now that we've, you know what? The show's gone 45 minutes. We probably don't have time for the last segment.
Oh, we have time. Jillian Stead, you're excused. Thank you for your service. I hope all things are well in England.
All right, I'm just
Maclean?
going to sit here politely, and I'm going to let you celebrate because I'm a gentleman and I am a man of honor. But this is your time to shine, Jordan.
As an owner of the greatest sports franchise in the history of humankind, the Green Bay Packers Incorporated. Green Bay Packers Inc. are proud to announce today the contract extension of one Aaron Charles Rodgers, a 4-time MVP, 2-time reigning MVP, to a 4-year, $200 million contract, which inexplicably actually frees up enough cap space for us to also bring back our star receiver, Davante Adams. They have this mental telepathy thing that they've got going. It's outstanding news. Now, you're saying, oh, Jordan, well, good for you, another few years of contending. Maybe the Packers will finally get over the top in the playoffs, and we all fervently hope so. But I have spent months on Twitter watching Broncos fans airbrush and Photoshop Aaron Rodgers' face into that ugly orange jerseys, hideous looking jerseys. Bronco fans claiming that they would be an immediate Super Bowl contender with Aaron Rodgers at the helm, even though they'd have to send us a boatload of draft picks and Jerry Jeudy and a bunch of other players to get them. Not sure what they thought was going to happen there. Like, you're not that good a team, even with Rodgers. But anyways, I had to put up with Pittsburgh Steelers fans doing the same thing. Oh, he winked once at Mike Tomlin during a game. That's a sign he wants to play with Tomlin. Oh, I had to put up with Vegas fans. Oh, his plane flew over Las Vegas. He was obviously meeting with the owner. And come on. This guy is a Green Bay Packer yesterday. He's a Green Bay Packer today. He is a Green Bay Packer forever. He'll go into the NFL Hall of Fame on the first ballot, one of the great players of all time. And I, for one, would just like to say, nah, to all of you other fans. And the cherry on top, Chicago Bear fans, Minnesota Viking fans, easily. Detroit Lion fans, they're just delusional. Zubik and what's his name, Oliphant, they're just nuts for being, They have one good player in the 90s, and they all got hooked in by Barry Sanders, and they didn't have the wherewithal to get out of that fandom. Bears fans and Viking fans, oh, it's all over. The Packers are going to lose, and they're going to have Jordan Love at the helm, and we're going to beat them, blah, blah, blah. Well, we own you. We still own you. We're always going to own you. The Bears still suck. The Vikings still don't have a Super Bowl, and it is good times. The kings of the NFC North, the Green Bay Packers. Go Pack.
Well, I'm glad you've shown that you can win with class.
We don't win enough Super Bowls, so we got to win these free agent signings, apparently. So
take your victories when you can get them.
Yeah,
and just for the record, I photoshopped nothing, and I mean literally nothing because I can't. But yes, you're not wrong. I have seen that image many times over. I'm very happy for you, and I mean that very, very sincerely.
I'm looking forward to Teddy Bridgewater throwing 3 picks in the game for you again, and it'll be great. Oh, what a great day. What a great day. It's sunny out. If I could afford to drive somewhere and go somewhere nice, I would.
You should celebrate with some grapes.
That's right. Yes, I might splurge on $4.99 grapes. Might walk over to Save-On here and see what I can do.
Tremendous. He's for a very gloating and happy and pleased with himself, Jordan Bateman. I'm Maclean K. Happy politics.